Unleashing Sudden Red. My name is Daniel Vallis from InformedChristians.com, a website ministry devoted to discerning current events from a Christian and biblical perspective. This video is a warning, but it is not a prediction. I do not know what will happen, but I can show you what is going on right now, and also the biblical patterns and shadows and the celestial signs and the prophetic signs that are going on right now that demand our attention, that we must be ready. And we have seen so much messaging just within the past few days. We are entering a very important prophetic time in biblical history and world history right now. The enemy knows it. The enemy knows what time it is. The enemy sees the celestial signs as well. They read scripture. They know what the Bible warns us of. And as Christians, we have been looking at the biblical patterns and shadows and also the celestial signs. And we've seen a lot of this, and we were looking forward to this time for many weeks. But we're also watching the enemy and how they have been ramping up and preparing for the mystery of iniquity to be unrestrained, for their work to be unleashed, which includes a lot of destruction. The Bible tells us when we hear them say, peace and safety, sudden destruction cometh. And we heard that warning 6 months ago. And now we find ourselves at a very important time where we are expecting prophetic events to transpire. And the enemy also knows, apparently, that they are about to be unrestrained as well. And we are right on top of some very important prophetic shadows and patterns that demand our attention in light of everything else we see and in light of the celestial signs as well. The enemy has been preparing their disciples for a long time, looking toward this time. And since May 1st, we've seen a lot of messaging increase, even so much more. We saw how they were busy in just a few days and weeks beforehand, but how the messaging has gotten so blatant ever since May Day too as well, because they know the mystery of iniquity that they've been preparing for, the Nimrod, the Hitler type, is about to be revealed. They know he is about to come through the doorway. He is about to be revealed. And their purple reign is about to start. Lucifer in the flesh. And they've been putting out blatant messages, as well as very sober warnings that there's about to be a triumphal entry through gates and also involving shedding of blood and destruction and war. And we've seen direct references to the triumphal entry and ties to Mars, the god of war. We talked about all that before because they know this is about to happen. They are on the threshold of being unrestrained, unleashed. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are about to be released, which is going to bring a lot of sudden destruction to the world and persecution as well. And the enemy has been pointing their disciples to a lot of the arches, triumphal arches, primarily because that is what they are expecting, and a lot of their messaging builds around that concept. So they've been pointing their disciples to triumphal arches and symbols and shadows and patterns that are tied to and related to those arches and their placement as well. So just within the past few days, since April 19th, we've seen a huge increase of the messaging regarding triumphal arches. Now on May 8th, Sunday, the world's attention was brought to another triumphal arch, the one in Paris. And what they did on Sunday is they shut down the entire boulevard from the Arch of Triumph to a smaller Arch of Triumph at the other end of the boulevard. And it got a lot of attention because this is one of the busiest boulevards in Paris. They shut it down for a day to supposedly promote pollution awareness and all that and promote tourism. So it's making a lot of attention in the news, and because this is very rarely done and it's a very important traffic avenue as well. But they're bringing attention in Paris, the city of light, to the Arch of Triumph, the Arch of Triumph. Bringing attention to that Arch of Triumph, and then at the other end, there's another Arch of Triumph there, but also an obelisk, a phallus symbol, and the Eye of Apollo reference as well with the Ferris wheel and sun symbol. They're putting this out right now. When we look at a map, we could see how they're all lined up. The Arch of Triumph, a huge Arch of Triumph, the largest Arch of Triumph, and they're bringing attention to it now. In line with that is an Egyptian obelisk, and then next is a smaller Arch of Triumph, and after that is the illuminated pyramid at the Louvre. And this event got a lot of attention to both ends of this line, the Arch of Triumph and the Illuminated Pyramid, and the other Arch of Triumph, and also the obelisk. And it was getting a lot of media attention and talk about how they were also able to bring up past events. They were able to talk about the terror attacks in Paris back a few months ago, back on November 13th. So they were resurrecting, in a sense, the calls for peace and safety. And we talked about this back then, and it's in our Exodus 2 book 2 as well. The huge flourish of calls for peace and safety, how the ideas of terrorism and peace, a false peace largely, but they were putting out blatantly at that time, peace and safety, the concepts of peace and safety. And we talk about that in the booklet of how it just spread over social media and Twitter, the hashtags of peace and safety. And that's what Scripture told us to listen for. When they say peace and safety, sudden destruction's coming. And so here we are 6 months later, and this is being revisited in context of triumphal arches and an entry through the gateways in connection with war and red and shedding of blood. And this is a high-profile event, too. This was a major boulevard getting a lot of attention. This is about one of the largest Arch of Triumph messages they could possibly send out, probably, calling attention to the Arch of Triumph. And when we look back just a few days ago, on the 4th, how Google Doodle put out the Washington Arch based on Arch of Titus. And we talked about that connection to events that are about to transpire in just hours. And so Satan's disciples knew just a few days ago, not to mention all the other mentions of arches as well, but they were given a clue back on the 4th to keep your eye on arches. They kept it on their mind, brought it to their mind again. And of course, there's been a lot other warnings and messages of the palm entries and the triumphal entries in connection with persecution and shedding blood and war. All of that has been very recent, but now they're drawing attention to the grand Arch of Triumph, the big Arch of Triumph, the gateway. And in connection with red and blue again, which we've been talking about and they've been pushing. So it's very significant that they have a huge red and blue flag, of course it's the French flag, hanging in the Arch of Triumph and all up and down the boulevard. And this is the picture that's going out in the news and social media, reminding people again of the Arch of Triumph. There's about to be a triumphal entry of the red and blue. And this is the same messaging that they were putting out 6 months ago when they put out the warnings of peace and safety. And all the buildings around the world were lit up with the red and blue, the French flags, the red and blue. Particularly the Brandenburg Gate there with the Apollo, because that's what they've been getting ready for. And we talked about this with the concepts of purple. That is throughout their messaging, the red and the blue. And they are getting ready for the purple rain. That's what all of their work has been getting ready for. And it is all related to the entrance of their Apollo figure, their Hitler figure, their Nimrod figure. And they know he's about to be unrestrained, he's about to be released, he's about to be revealed. So in connection with the triumphal entry, they're also tying it directly to the phallus symbol, which relates to Osiris. That is also tied to their occult beliefs as well. And juxtaposed right in front of the Eye of Apollo and the sun figure too as well. Very, very blatant. It is so obvious and so blatant now, the messaging, but they know the world is asleep now. These concepts are directly linked together. Now, what's so special about this obelisk that's capped with a gold pyramid? Well, this is at the place of the Concorde, and it is one of 2 obelisks that the Egyptian government gave to the French in the 19th century. The other one stayed in Egypt. It was too difficult and heavy to move to France with the technology at that time. But it's from the Luxor Temple in Egypt. But the other real one is here on the place of the Concorde. The square where it is located was renamed in 1792 as Place of the Revolution when it became the stage for the horrendous public executions by the guillotine. During the French Revolution, this was the site of many, many beheadings. And we've seen the enemy drawing attention to blood and the concepts of death and blood being shed, and that there is a warning about what is about to come onto the scene. They're warning their disciples, and they're putting out the same theme. We've seen it a lot with them drawing attention to the blood-red Nile and the messaging in Star Wars The Force Awakens trailers. They were making it very clear what they were referring to. Beheading in connection with red. And even in Alice Through the Looking Glass, very prominent in-your-face theme of beheading by the Red Queen. And then others have covered Obama's recent speech at the Correspondence Dinners, where he made very clear reference to a red wedding, which was basically a reference to a bloodbath massacre. And he was joking about it, that there's about to be a red wedding, there's about to be a bloodbath, there's about to be a massacre. At the same time that the Trevi Fountain was lit up with red to represent the blood of persecuted Christians. There's a reason why they're putting out all this messaging right now and then drawing attention to the place where similar events happened. They know the red horse of war is about to be released. They know the fifth seal of the tribulation is persecution, where the blood of Christians will be shed. They know they are about to be unrestrained. They are about to be unleashed in their pursuit of blood. And when you read the book of Revelation, take note of how it mentions the shedding of blood will characterize the tribulation period, and water turning to blood because the entire world is bloodthirsty. So God gives them blood to drink. Blood is about to be shed. Massive persecution, massive death. It's going to be a bloodbath. And Satan knows it, and the twisted, sick occult is celebrating it now and drawing their disciples' attention to it. Do you know what time it is? They're bringing attention to the largest triumphal arch, to an obelisk that marks the site of beheadings, and then beyond that is another triumphal arch. And this one has a quadrigra on top of. We talked about this in the past, back 6 months ago. Supposedly, they say this one is carrying peace, a figure of peace, but it should be seen as really an Apollo reference, especially look at the chariot, and you can see the Mercury reference too as well, the chariot of the gods, the messenger of the gods. This in connection with everything else we've seen as well. And then, of course, just beyond that is the illuminated pyramid at the Louvre. And all these are in line, and they're all connected because it's a massive story and parable that Satan is drawing his disciples' attention to right now. Here, right on the threshold of all these prophetic events, Satan is drawing attention to the triumphal entry that he is about to make, and that blood is about to flow. And of course, this triumphal arch, and a lot of other messaging we've seen very recently, reminds us of Edge of Tomorrow, which took place on this exact same setting at the triumphal arch, because it's all related to the triumphal arch. When the Antichrist comes onto the scene, the Bible tells us that he will be altering time, and he will be allowed to alter time. All these concepts go together, and Satan has been preparing his disciples, and they've been looking for the visual clues and the patterns and themes in all these. But it's tied to the triumphal arch and the Louvre, as we've talked about before, and in fact, the main crux of this movie was centered right there at the Louvre, at the illuminated pyramid. Because that's what it's all related to. It's all related to the illuminated pyramid, the mystery of iniquity. They're about to finish it with their grand entrance. And it's tied to Trafalgar Square, like we talked about, where they set up the other triumphal arch related to Mars, the god of war, because that's what's about to happen, in connection with time. If you haven't yet, watch our video, Time, CERN in the Bible, where we talk about these concepts from a biblical perspective. We also have PDF versions of our articles on our website too as well. The link is in the description box to all these resources and more. Also read our articles, Time in Tomorrowland and Time and Back to the Future, for other messaging that the enemy has laid down long time ago, conditioning and preparing their disciples for what is about to happen. Also look at our poster and video, Revelation Spiral of Time, where we look at it from a biblical perspective of how the events of Revelation must be understood in context of the Antichrist changing time. And also the concept that the tribulation time is a time of purifying for all the Christians who do not make themselves ready now. This is why the church was warned about the events of the tribulation, so that they will make themselves ready and purify their lives beforehand so they will not be judged. If we would judge ourselves, we would not be judged. But Satan knows there's about to be a massive bloodbath because most of the Christians are asleep. In fact, when you read the letters to the 7 churches in Revelation, the majority of them were not ready. Sudden destruction is coming, and so is persecution. And when you read Revelation, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse alone, the Bible tells us plainly, are going to kill 1/4 of the world's population. The world has never seen that much death and that much bloodshed. It is going to be sudden destruction. It is going to be a red wedding. It is going to be a massive bloodbath. And the sick, twisted occult is celebrating it. because this is where their mind is. They revel in human sacrifice and blood and drinking blood and all of that. They are celebrating this. That's why they have this messaging. It's to get them ready, and they're celebrating now that they are about to be released and unrestrained. And they will avenge what happened a long time ago during the flood. And Jesus Christ gave direct warning to his disciples to beware of the tribulation snare. If you are not watching and paying attention and making yourself ready, you're going to walk right into it, and you're going to be stuck in the tribulation. We have a whole article about that. Beware the tribulation snare. We also have another article, what is the falling away? Definitely check out these articles. The Bible gives us plenty of warnings by Jesus Christ himself to his disciples that we don't have to go through the tribulation. The rapture is a reward. But if you want to be asleep and be a hypocrite, then you can stay behind. Remember Lot's wife. That's a direct warning from Jesus Christ to his disciples. We are almost out of time. It is time to wake up. Sudden destruction and bloodshed and persecution is almost here. Now, just a few days ago, back on the 23rd of April, they put out the movie Hologram for the King with Tom Hanks and had a lot of allusions to the water as going to another dimension. We talked about that. It was released by Lionsgate. We talked about it before, and traveling over water as time, and even the purple smoke. That was a direct reference to the purple rain. They're expecting their king to come onto the scene any day now, with direct references to Apollo that they made in the trailer alone, and Golden Gates, and we talked about that, and then the direct references to Pan, Cernernos, the horned one that they're expecting, along with Pandemonium and Mayhem. They are expecting Lucifer in the flesh to come. And this is the messaging we've seen in just the hours and days since then. This is what they're getting ready for. This is what they are eagerly anticipating. The arrival of him, so they can start their purple reign. Definitely watch the Antichrist Returns, our video which explores this from a biblical perspective. But the Hologram for the King, released in movie theaters just several days ago. The main star was Tom Hanks. So it's very suspicious that today a trailer was released for another Tom Hanks film called Inferno, based on the best-selling novel by the author of the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. It starts out with a bell ringing, and bell rings are often used in the occult and magic, and that's why they rang it at the 2012 London Olympics. But starts out with a bell ringing and resonating, and they show a train traveling, an allusion to time traveling. And then they directly show another river, and we've seen a lot of that, going down river with bridges over it. And their message throughout it is there's a switch. If you throw it, half the people on earth will die. But if you don't, in 100 years, the human race will be extinct. And they end the trailers with a massive bloodbath. The trailer for their film Inferno, talking about half the world's population dying in a massive bloodbath. If you read the book of Revelation and read the statistics that it gives for the casualty count, by the halfway mark of the tribulation, 50%, half of the world's population will be dead. Satan knows what time it is. So do his disciples. They are expecting a bloodbath. And they have other variations of the trailer, but the same emphasis on time, traveling like a train, time like a river, and bridges and highways, references and shapes, allusions to more water and time, and CERN technology too as well. The main character is looking for messages. And the whole trailer is so ironic because the whole context of the movie is a message. It's time for the bloodbath, and they know it. They know the mystery of iniquity is about to be released. And they're using this as a message, and they even directly show a stylized picture of Dante's hell to show you this is what's about to be unrestrained. And they bring attention to rivers of blood in the underground, being immersed in blood. Blood, blood, blood. In connection with columns and arches and gateways, with the theme that he must uncover the truth before hell is unleashed. They know what is about to be released. They know what is about to be unrestrained. They know the scope of it. They know what it entails. They know what it involves. They know who it's going to target. They know how many people are going to die even, and they even tell you. And this very trailer alone is mocking those who are asleep, who aren't uncovering the very truth that is in front of them right before hell, the mystery of iniquity, is released. They know sudden destruction, war, and persecution is about to come onto the scene. That's the very first thing of tribulation, the very first seals that are opened. Sudden destruction is coming. We've been warning you about that for 6 months. The enemy knows that. Shiva, the destroyer, that is the one and type that they are expecting to come through the doorway. The destroyer. And it's notable that this film, Inferno, is the third in the series. The Da Vinci Code was the first, and then Angels and Demons was the second. And if you've watched our Time CERN in the Bible video, you'll remember that Angels and Demons was filmed at CERN's Large Hadron Collider, and they even have a page at CERN where they talk about it. They know they are about to be unrestrained, and that sudden destruction is about to be here, and that's why they are announcing this now. And when we look at the movie poster for Inferno, with the tagline, "Every clue will take him deeper," a reference of going down the rabbit hole. But then when we look at the artwork in the back, which is clearly a reference to a spiral of time as well, you should recognize the artwork in the back because we have covered it before. It's the spiral staircase at the Vatican, which has the fallen angels all over it. And this is a reference to Jacob's ladder, and we find ourselves right near that shadow pattern biblically as well right now. They know what time it is, and they're going to be using technology and wonders that they have access to as part of the tribulation deceptions. Inferno, direct references to the angels and spirals of time, and we talked about how the Vatican back near Hanukkah was warning their disciples even then with the illumination show at the Vatican about the lion. They know what time it is celestially and prophetically. And they showed the rising sun, the Apollo figure that they are looking for, the Palion. And they also directly tied it to the Phoenix. Before they can start their new order, they have to get rid of the old. There's going to be a lot of sudden destruction. The Antichrist is going to uproot 3 kings. And it appears that a large portion of that is where the quarter population casualty count will be involved in. Satan is conditioning and telling his disciples to expect it, to anticipate it, to celebrate it, and to be aware of it. And when you look upward from the Vatican spiral staircase with the angels and cherubim all over it, there's another direct reference to CERN technology. And it's also very notable that the spiral is actually a double helix. It's 2 spirals counter-rotating against each other, and that ties in with the purple rain concept with the DNA as well. But definite references to CERN, where they filmed the Angels and Demons. So this Inferno is tied as well through visual references as well, and the going down the rabbit hole also referenced on the Inferno poster as well. They know what time it is. In the movie, which centers around a virus, which interestingly is held in a container, which has a image very reminiscent of Baphomet, the horned figure, engraved on it, the mark of the beast. If you read the novel that the movie is based off of, the plague that is contained therein is a vector virus that randomly activates to employ DNA modification. We talked about this concept in our purple videos. The idea of RNA recombination, altering existing genetic structures. And that is why those who take the mark during the tribulation will be unredeemable. They become the sons of Satan. In the trailer, they talk about half the people on earth will die. And that's just by the halfway mark of the tribulation. But the scene where they mention this is very important, because this scene is in Venice, where a portion of the film and book takes place. But this square where they are talking about half the people on earth will die is this square where the Basilica of St. Mark is located. And you can even see a portion of it in the trailer. But at the front of this basilica are 4 horses. A quadriga. And these horses that are here on this basilica in the square that were referenced today in Inferno originally sat on the Arch of Triumph that was also brought our attention to as well. It was originally surmounted by the famous horses of St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice, which had been captured in 1798 by Napoleon. At this Arch of Triumph, right at the other end of the avenue that they were promoting today, that Arch of Triumph is directly connected to the Inferno trailer which came out hours later talking about how half the world will die and how people need to wake up and figure it out before hell is unleashed. This is what they've been getting ready for. This is what they've been warning people about. This is what they are anticipating and celebrating and working toward. Bloodshed, a red wedding, a massacre, the shedding of blood, persecution. And they're drawing attention back to the very place where the biblical warning was given out of peace and safety, that sudden destruction is coming. Time is almost up, friend. What are you doing? We find ourselves at a very important time prophetically. We have heard so many warnings from Scripture and the celestial signs. What are we doing? Are we making ourselves ready? Are we remembering that we are only pilgrims and strangers here on this world? Or are we trying to live for a world that's trying to destroy and kill? Jesus Christ told his disciples, remember Lot's wife. This was not just something you do at the end of your life. This is something we need to do every single day. Remember Lot's wife. Don't get attached to this world, because this is not where it's at. It's going to be destroyed very soon. And if your heart is here instead of on things of eternity, then you will stay here with the other hypocrites, like Christ told his disciples, because you walked into a snare because you ignored the warnings that he gave you. If you haven't yet, watch our video, The Letters to the Seven Churches, as well as look at our booklet, Exodus 2, The Bride Goes to the King's House, where we talk about a lot of these concepts and what the bride should be doing at this late hour, as well as the peace and safety warnings that Scripture warns about and the ones that happened 6 months ago. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all the children of light, and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of the darkness. Therefore let us not sleep, as do others, but let us watch and be sober. Are you sleeping, or are you watching and sober, and aware of what time it is, and living accordingly? Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. And every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. It's time to wake up. It's time to purify ourselves. It's time to make ourselves ready. Time is almost up. Maranatha.